Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now from Washington is Senator Johnny Isakson, Republican from Georgia, and a member of the Senate Committees on Finance, Ethics, Veterans Affairs, and Health. And Senator Isakson, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be with you, Kathleen.
Well, it's been almost 32 years since 52 Americans were taken hostage in Iran and held for 444 days. You've introduced a bill to hold Iran accountable for the attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and the hostage crisis that followed. What can you tell us about this bill?
Well, basically, every American that was alive as I was in 1978, 79, and 80, and 81 remembers that terrible period of time in our relationship with Iran. And remember when the Iranians took our embassy in Tehran, took our representatives and our diplomats hostage, faked executions, tortured them, beat them. Finally, after 444 days, they were released. But in the release that we negotiated away the ability for them to recover from Iran legally. So what we're trying to do is right a wrong that took place back then and be sure that these families have the opportunity to recover for the pain and suffering they did on behalf of the United States of America.
Yeah, why is this so important for the families these days?
Well, in almost every case, there has been compensation. In Libya, there was compensation on the Libya's forfeited funds for those people that were guilty of that were victims of the Lockerbie bombing. It's been traditional that people have been compensated for their suffering, but in this case, in the Algiers Accords, that was negotiated away. It's only appropriate that they be paid and compensated for the time they were held. This provides for an surtax of 30% on the Iran sanctions fines that are paid by businesses that do business with Iran. It's not taxpayer money, it's not the Americans' money, it's those who are violating the law and the sanctions law in terms of doing business with Iran. So it costs the taxpayer nothing and compensates the family and the victim up to $10,000 per day for each of the days they were held hostage, which would be about $4.4 million per person.
Now, as was the case in Benghazi, the host country did not provide adequate security for the U.S. Embassy in Iran. Do you believe Iran, even with a new president, will ever apologize for the attack?
No, I do not.
Earlier today, the National Security Agency Director Keith Alexander told a House committee that 50 terror threats in 20 countries have been disrupted with the assistance of 2 surveillance programs revealed by former defense contractor Edward Snowden. Can you share with us your view of these programs? And Rand Paul is suing, claiming they're unconstitutional. Is Rand Paul right?
I, like most Americans alive today, lived through 9/11, 2001, when America got caught and not able to compete competitively with people that would do bad things to us. I was part of the group that helped write the Patriot Act and debated it on the floor of the Senate. We finally put U.S. intelligence in a digital world when our enemies had it and we didn't. These protections that are given to the American people are there because we have the type of intelligence that's necessary in the 21st century. You have to thread a narrow needle between constitutional rights and freedoms and the information we need to get from the people who would do us harm. By having the FISA courts, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Courts, we have judicial review every 90 days of the warrants that are issued for the surveillance of these people outside the United States, non-U.S. citizens who we know would do us harm. It's in the interest and the protection of our country. We've got to monitor it. We've got to be careful we don't ever cross the line, but it's absolutely essential to have a safe America in the 21st century.
Do we need more congressional oversight over phone and data surveillance programs, or are you confident that these programs won't be abused?
I'm confident we'll always have the amount of oversight necessary to root out and find abuse if it takes place. But these are some of the most professional people in the United States of America, some of those highly technical, professional people in the United States of America, people who have our best interests at heart, people who are watched over by judges in the courts, people who are watched over by others in terms of their peer and peer review. This is a program that has lots of transparency to those that need to see through to make sure it's being done right.
Edward Snowden has been hailed as both a hero and a traitor. What should happen to him?
Well, you know, anytime you leave the country, go to a country that is not the least bit interested in freedom, and that's the nation of China, then hold a press conference divulging American secrets to the world, and then not come back to our country, then you haven't done what you should do. It's a matter of treason as far as I'm concerned to do something like that. Now, what happens to him, I don't know. He's been offered, it's ironic, he's been offered sanctuary in Russia, who invented surveillance and eavesdropping. So that'll give you some idea of what they think about what he did.
Let's turn to a developing story now. The White House says President Obama is close to completing a series of executive actions to address gun violence. The administration has completed or made significant progress on 21 of 23 executive actions that President Obama outlined back in January as part of a major gun control initiative governing by executive order. Is this an arbitrary use of power on the president's part? And if so, what will you and other lawmakers do about it?
Crosses the line of constitutional freedoms like the right to bear arms and the Second Amendment, then Congress can do something about it. There are limited things you can do by executive order. We have 3 distinct branches of government to have checks and balances, to see to it nobody goes too far, and we have the courts to oversee us. So we'll be watching closely.
You are among the lawmakers who voted to move bipartisan immigration reform legislation to the Senate floor. Can you share with us how you plan to vote on the legislation? And are you concerned this legislation will lead to a permanent Democratic majority?
Well, first of all, I'm one that believes in the First Amendment for the American people and for the Congress of the United States. Every bill ought to be debated. So I voted to be sure we had a robust debate on what's a very big issue in the United States of America. In terms of how I'll vote in the end, it's going to depend on what the bill looks like in the end, and that's a long way from today. So I have no idea how the final vote will go. But I do know this. The American people, whatever temporary status you give to people who are here formally, legally, or illegally, the American people want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So border security has to be the predicate for any reform of any illegal immigrant into some type of transitional status.
Are you satisfied with the border security provision as it is now?
And I'm a co-sponsor of the Cornyn Amendment, which does strengthen border security, and I hope it will pass.
All right. President Obama is hinting that he will allow Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke to retire, despite the fact that it's a critical time for the central bank as it decides when to scale back its quantitative easing. As a member of the Senate Committee on Finance, what do you make of this? And what impact will scaling back of quantitative easing have on the U.S. economy?
Well, I think we've probably gone too far on quantitative easing as it is. We've been fooling ourselves by buying our own debt for some period of time, and have almost like drug addiction, have got ourselves used to it. So coming off of it is going to have to be a slow process, or you might have an overreaction by the markets coming back. As far as Secretary Bernanke is concerned, he has done a good job. I have had issue with some of the things that he has done, but he let us know some months ago he would probably retire, and I think it's probably time to get a fresh face, to look at the agency, look at what the Federal Reserve is doing, and look at what's in the best fiscal health of the United States of America.
Last question for you, Senator. Dish TV Network has filed suit against Japan's SoftBank's bid for Sprint, the third largest telecommunications carrier in the nation. Dish alleges that SoftBank has close financial and other ties with Huawei, a Chinese firm that the U.S. government says has been targeting the U.S. for cyber attacks. Now, a number of conservatives say that we should not open up a significant portion of our telecommunications network to a company with such ties. Is this something that you're concerned about, and is Congress going to question the transaction?
Well, yes, I have concern, and yes, I'm not unfamiliar with Huawei and the issues that people have with them. I don't think I should get into a public interview and some of the details on that case, except to say we've got to be very careful and protect the American people and the interest of the American people in approving any transaction like that.
All right, Senator Johnny Isakson, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.